So when you hear 1001 Nights, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably genies, right? Magic carpets, Aladdin and his lamp. And yeah, that imagery has shaped everything from Disney movies to the stories we grew up with. But behind all of that, there's a single, incredibly powerful idea that a story, if you tell it at just the right time, can literally change the world. So let's get into the real story behind all those stories.
I mean, really think about that for a second. If you were in a moment of pure desperation, staring down absolute unchecked power, could a simple story be your only weapon? And more importantly, could it actually work?
Well, that's the extraordinary premise right at the heart of this whole collection. A life hanging by a thread every single night for almost 3 years. This is the story of how she pulled it off.
Okay, so it all starts with what's called the frame story. This is the engine that drives the entire epic. And, it kicks off with a king who's completely broken by betrayal. So here's the setup. You've got a kingdom that is literally being terrorized by its own ruler. This guy, King Shahryar, is so consumed by rage that he starts this horrific cycle of murder. Into this absolute nightmare steps Shahrazad. Now, she's not a warrior, she's a scholar with a library for a brain, and she has a plan, a brilliant, unbelievably daring plan to use the king's own mind against him. And here's the genius of her plan. Every single night, she tells the king this mesmerizing story, but just as the sun starts to rise, she stops, right at the most exciting part. The king, now desperate to know what happens next, is forced to let her live for just one more day. Night after night, his need to hear the ending starts to overpower his impulse for violence. It's just a total masterclass in psychological strategy. Now, you might think this whole thing was written by a single author, but the truth is, well, the truth is a story in itself. See, The Nights isn't really a book. It's more like a living, breathing anthology that's been evolving for over 1,000 years. And what's so cool is when you look at the story's DNA. This is not one culture's book, not at all. It's a compilation, right? It's stitched together from old Persian prototypes, ancient Indian fables, and it's soaked up all these rich urban story traditions from cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Damascus. It basically traveled like a merchant on the Silk Road, picking up new tales everywhere it went. And you can really see that journey on this timeline. I mean, look how the Knights traveled the world, changing and growing with every new culture it met. It started with roots in Persia. Then it absolutely blossomed in the Arab world. And then, boom, it just exploded onto the global stage with that French translation by Galland. Every new version, from Burton's famous English set to Hadawi's modern work, has just added another layer to this incredible literary tradition. And here's a fun fact that might actually blow your mind. Two of the most famous stories, we're talking Aladdin and Ali Baba, they aren't actually in the oldest Arabic versions of the book. Nope, they were added by that French translator Galland, who heard them from a Syrian storyteller. So they kind of entered the collection through the side door, becoming totally central to how we in the West think of the Knights, but they weren't even part of the original core. Wild, right? But look, this is way more than just some cool literary history. It's also a masterclass in the art of storytelling. Seriously, Shahrazad's playbook for survival is packed with lessons that are just as relevant today as they were 1,000 years ago. Okay, let's break down her method. First up, you gotta hook 'em early. Start with high stakes. Second, always leave a door open. You want to end every conversation, every story, with a what's next that just builds that anticipation. Third, and this is so important, humanize the villain. Shahrazad doesn't try to defeat the king. She heals him by telling stories that let his own humanity, his own complexity come to the surface. And finally, compound the small wins. She wasn't aiming for one big grand victory. She was just focused on surviving today to create a better tomorrow. Get a load of this number. In some versions of the book, more than 60% of the nights end with a cliffhanger. This is the original binge watch engine. Shahrazad literally weaponized curiosity. She invented the kind of serialized storytelling that keeps us glued to our screens today. Think about how many times you've said, okay, just one more episode. That feeling, that's the Shahrazad effect in action. And if you look past the genies and the magic carpets, you'll see these stories are wrestling with some huge, really adult themes. They're all about how power has to be guided by wisdom. They teach risk management through these small, survivable bets. They're constantly questioning the line between what is just and what is just blind fate. And above all, they champion the power of curiosity to overcome the destructive need for certainty. So, what does all this ancient wisdom mean for us right now? How can we actually use it? Well, I think we can boil it down to 3 key rules from Shahrazad's playbook that can help us navigate, well, whatever comes next.
So here they are. Rule number 1, survive today. In any crisis, the most important thing is to make the choice that keeps your options open for tomorrow. 2, tell better stories. At work, at home, anywhere. A compelling story built on clarity and curiosity will always be more effective than just brute force. And 3, practice small courage. Real transformation almost never happens in one heroic leap. It's the result of 1,000 small, consistent acts of bravery, day in and day out.
You know, in the end, this entire massive epic, it all comes down to this one simple, powerful decision repeated over and over and over again. It's a choice to face the sunrise, to take a breath, and to believe that the right story, told well, can make all the difference in the world.